Popular literature by Edwin Salich. Increase in literacy. The 18th century saw a significant increase in literacy rates across Europe, with Protestant countries leading the way. By 1800, 1 in 4 people in England and France were literate. Forms of popular literature. Popular literature included chapbooks, pamphlets, and almanacs, offering a mix of religious and secular content. These were cheap and accessible to the public, especially the lower classes. Chapbooks that contained moral teaching and entertainment to regular people. Religious. More chapbooks featured prayers, saint lives, and moral teachings, supporting religious and ethical values. Entertainment. Stories often included fairy tales, adventures, and narratives involving supernatural elements appealing to the imagination and everyday struggles of common people. Practical information. Almanacs were widely read for agriculture advice, astronomical events, and household tips, combining practical guidance with entertainment and Enlightenment influence. Although rural peasants were generally isolated from Enlightenment ideas, they could encounter them through rumors, markets, and translated pamphlets, which brought new ideas into their lives. Role of servants. Servants played a crucial role in spreading Enlightenment critics and ideas, often acting as intermediaries between educated and less educated groups. Revolutionary texts. Influential works like Thomas Paine's Common Sense circulated, critiquing customs and institutions and challenging the societal status quo.
Leisure and Recreation by Ryan Freeberger. Even though literacy rate in Europe was growing at the time, tradition in villages was spread orally. During the winter months, families would gather around the fire in their house, sing songs, tell stories, and do craft work. There wasn't much entertainment for women during this period. They'd usually go to other cottages to sew, chat, and spin. They would also meet potential suitors for their daughters. The most common pastime for men was drinking. Almost all villages had a tavern. Cheap homemade liquor went on the rise for poor peasants, and distilling was now less expensive. In bigger towns and cities, entertainment was more readily available. People had access to things like gardens, theaters, and libraries. Urban fairs had acrobats, magic tricks, and food. Similar to libraries and urban fairs, live events such as horse racing, bullfighting, and boxing raised in popularity. The subgenre of blood sports also remained popular due to things like bull baiting and cockfighting, which were desired by the masses. In bull baiting, a bull was tied to a stake and was attacked by a pack of dogs. It would later be butchered and sold. Cockfighting was a fight to the death between two roosters that provided the attraction of fast action and high betting. The largest merge of religion and recreation at the time was carnivals. This holiday preceded Lent, the 40 days of fasting before Easter. Dancing, drinking, and masquerading were popular ways to celebrate. People also dressed as opposite social classes and different genders. For example, men dressed as women, peasants dressed as nobles, and masters acted like peasants by helping serve tables. People had the opportunity during Carnival to release pent-up frustration before returning to their hard lives. The themes of new leisure had many effects on modern horse racing. First of all, horses became bred by kings for speed by kings and aristocrats. They produced thoroughbreds that are still prized today. Large-scale horse races also gained popularity during the mid-17th century. They raced at Newmarket, which is still home to Britain's racing industry. Finally, jockeys went from low-status domestic servants to independent professionals. Prizefighter James Figg opened the first amphitheater specifically for fighting in 1719. There would often be fights between boxers, animals, and swordsmen. This growing popularity led to rules such as wearing gloves, referees, and judges. In other parts of England, soccer games would occur between rival villages, and elite boarding schools organized games and made enforced rules for rugby. Thank you.
New Foods and Appetites by David Solsky. In early 18th century Europe, bread was a staple food, vital to the diet. For example, peasants in Beauvais, France, consumed around 2 pounds daily, underscoring its central role in their lives. Here's a joke. Why did the loaf of bread get grounded? Because it was loafing around. Ordinary people relied on dark bread made from coarsely ground wheat and rye, the most accessible grains. This bread was commonly consumed with water, wine, or beer. The moral economy concept was prevalent among peasants and laborers who believed in just prices. They felt prices should be fair, ensuring consumer and producer protection, and supported government intervention against excessive prices. When essential goods like bread became too expensive, peasants often responded with bread riots, reflecting their desperation and dissatisfaction with rising costs. Rural diets included various vegetables, particularly peas and beans, which provided crucial nutrition. These crops had been cultivated since the Middle Ages and were eaten fresh in spring and summer. Other seasonal vegetables, such as cabbages, carrots, and wild greens, contributed to their diets, while fruit consumption was mainly limited to summer month. Here's another joke. Why are carrots the best motivators? Because they always root for each other. Milk was primarily used to make cheese and butter, which peasants sold at local markets to generate income for taxes and rent. By the 1700s, common people consumed significantly less meat than in the 1500s due to a declining standard of living and rising meat costs. Hunting laws restricted access to game for the nobility and large landowners. In stark contrast, the wealthy elite enjoyed abundant rich meat and fish dishes, with dinners featuring lavish courses and long durations, often exceeding 5 hours. Okay, second to last one. Why don't fishes play piano? Because you can't tune a fish. These restrictions were bitterly resented as they limited ordinary people's access to previously available food sources. Urban artisans and small traders had a less monotonous diet compared to the peasants, benefiting from bustling markets that offered a variety of meals, vegetables, and fruits, although bread and beans still dominated. Patterns of food consumption changed as market gardening grew, especially in Low Countries in England, leading to a wider variety of vegetables in urban diets. The introduction of new foods from the Americas, such as corn, squash, and tomatoes, enhanced dietary diversity thanks to increased agricultural production and lower prices. Okay, here's the last one. What's a corn's favorite type of music? Pop! Colonial products became popular among Europeans, driven by a desire to emulate elite lifestyles. Items like tea and coffee were sought after as a symbol of luxury. The fast-paced work environment of the 18th century created new needs for stimulants, unlike the leisurely consumption by the gentry. Lower classes often drank tea or coffee at work to combat monotony and fatigue. This shift marked a change in understanding daily necessities as common Europeans became more connected and influenced by international markets that were often beyond their comprehension and control. The widespread adoption of these colonial products made working people increasingly dependent on distant colonial economies and enslaved labor, linking them to global trade networks. Thank you for listening.
Rise of consumer culture. In the late 18th century, society began transitioning from a focus on self-sufficient living to engaging in a market-driven economy, largely due to the Industrial Revolution. Improvements in transportation, like the advent of railways, allowed products to be distributed to a wider audience, making a variety of goods available to more people. Advertising became crucial in this evolving consumer landscape. Print media and posters targeted the expanding middle class, influencing their purchasing choices. This period saw an influx of new affordable products, turning shopping into a routine activity for many. Mass production methods enabled the rapid and cost-effective creation of goods, encouraging greater consumerism. As the middle class grew, social structures shifted. Possessions began to reflect one's status and achievements. The shift toward a consumer society set the foundation for modern economics and continues to shape our lifestyles and values today.